Does toxic masculinity lead to suicide? That's my subject on today's Fiamengo file. I'm Janice Fiamengo of the University of Ottawa. On June 13th of 2017, the Canadian state broadcaster, the CBC, published an article called "Toxic Masculinity May Be Quadrupling the Suicide Rate for Canadian Men," written by Marc Beaulieu. I can't say I was surprised that once again, under the guise of caring for men, the CBC blamed masculinity for male suicide, and this on the day set aside for men's mental health awareness, no less. The subheading of the article is a choker. We're advised to, quote, "have the conversation no one else is having." Well, given that the CBC is funded by taxpayers to the tune of well over $1 billion a year, the vast majority of that money coming from men, you'd think the first place the CBC should be looking to assign blame for the lack of discussion of men's mental health issues would be itself. But actually, I would prefer the CBC remain totally silent on the issue rather than repeat the feminist mantra about how everything associated with masculinity is bad. In case we're under any doubt about the anti-male perspective of the writer, Marc Beaulieu uses terms throughout such as toxic, poisonous, destructive, unmanageable, noxious, and wince-inducing to characterize masculinity. He cites a number of studies, the most definitive being a comprehensive meta-analysis by Joel Wong of Indiana University that supposedly demonstrate, in Beaulieu's words, a, quote, definitive link between cliched machismo and poor mental health in men, end quote. Reading this, I thought, okay, here we go, yet another study confirming what we already think we know about masculinity as a disease. Beaulieu claims that the study, quote, supports and confirms research done in the last 60 years that people who conform to masculinity have poor mental health, end quote. And not content with that, he gives his own gloss of pop culture triumphalism, telling us, quote, the hard truth is that manning up is tearing people down, and we've had a sense of it for decades, end quote. His message, we should have got rid of masculinity a long time ago. The one small problem with Beaulieu's article, though, is that Beaulieu didn't actually read the study he refers to, or if he did, he failed to report on it accurately. Even that sentence about, quote, people who conform to masculinity, end quote, having poor mental health, isn't accurate in isolation as a summation of the study. Yes, the study does say explicitly that, quote, overall conformity to masculine norms was significantly and unfavorably associated, end quote, with negative mental health outcomes, though only, quote, modestly so. But that's not all the study found. In fact, it went on to say that, quote, the substantial degree of heterogeneity in the ESs, effect sizes, for these relationships highlights the need to disaggregate the generic construct of masculine norms and their differential associations with other outcomes, end quote. Sort of bafflegab, but in other words, it is wrong to say that masculine norms overall are the problem. Only certain very specific dimensions of masculinity show a clear negative correlation with health outcomes, and some show a positive correlation, according to the study. So even in a study that seems to accept a lot of feminist assumptions about male power and sexism, far more than I would prefer to see, even in that kind of a study, the study author doesn't believe in toxic masculinity in general, and in fact never uses that term or any of the other negative terms that Beaulieu was so enthusiastic about. Let's look just briefly at what the study actually says. And I freely admit I have zero training in psychology, so I would encourage anyone interested and with the expertise to look at the study and tell me what I've missed, as I'm sure I've missed a great deal. But here's a brief overview to show just how poorly the CBC author summarizes it. The study, and it is remarkable, the lack of honesty and accuracy in this article. It's mind-blowing. The study, published in the Journal of Counseling Psychology in 2017, entitled Meta-Analyses of the Relationship Between Conformity to Masculine Norms and Mental Health-Related Outcomes, is, as it states, a meta-analysis, meaning it's a study of studies. It looks at the results of 74 individual studies analyzing the relationships between mental health outcomes and something called the Conformity to Masculine Norms Inventory, which lists 11 typically masculine traits. The traits are winning, emotional control, risk-taking, violence, dominance, playboy, self-reliance, primacy of work, power over women, disdain for homosexuality, and pursuit of status. What's important is that the study concludes that the relationships between various masculine traits and health outcomes is far more complex than is claimed in the CBC article. Only 3 of the masculine traits, self-reliance, power over women, and playboy, were, according to the study's words, quote, consistently and, quote, robustly linked with negative outcomes. Other of the traits, such as winning, the pursuit of status, and dominance, had no clear correlation with negative health outcomes at all. And 2 of the traits, risk-taking and primacy of work, had both positive and negative outcomes. So as the study author notes, quote, although an excessive focus on work can be problematic for one's health and interpersonal relationships, work and career can also be an important source of meaning in life, end quote. And as a result, according to the study author, clinicians should guard against pathologizing individuals who adhere strongly to the masculine norm of primacy of work, e.g. by labeling them workaholics, end quote. In relation to risk-taking, the study author states, quote, on the one hand, individuals who conform strongly to the masculine norms of risk-taking might engage in risky health behavior that might predispose them to psychological problems. On the other hand, risk-takers might also be more willing to seek out opportunities to stretch themselves beyond their comfort zone, e.g. by trying out new hobbies that provide opportunities for self-actualization, end quote. So in sum, the complexity of the data leads the study author to an entirely different conclusion from what the CBC author presented. Joel Wong, the study author, stresses that, quote, it is not particularly meaningful to discuss individuals' conformity to masculine norms in a generic sense. In other words, overall. So just being masculine isn't correlated with anything toxic at all, and Marc Beaulieu almost entirely misrepresented the study's import. Actually, I have a lot of trouble with studies like this, regardless of their conclusions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that a study of this sort begins with an assumption, in this case that there is a direct correlation between certain masculine traits and certain negative health outcomes, and then looks to confirm them. And not that surprisingly, it does confirm at least some of them. The study author admits that these are correlations only, not causation. And the fact that we are dealing with correlation raises a number of serious questions about the meaning of the data and what conclusions can legitimately be drawn from it. How can researchers know whether a playboy trait, to choose one of the examples, is a cause of negative mental health outcomes, or whether the playboy trait is itself an effect of other issues, such as perhaps childhood sexual abuse? Cause and effect are difficult to untangle when it comes to personality and behavior. And furthermore, how do researchers know that other significant contextual factors, not even considered by the studies, don't play a much larger role than the specific male traits. For example, the study acknowledges racism as a potential cause of poor mental health outcomes in racial minority men, something it says needs to be studied further. But it doesn't acknowledge cultural man-blaming, misandry, as a potential factor in poor mental health outcomes for all men. It doesn't consider whether unequal divorce outcomes, denial of child custody, unfair legal treatment in cases of claimed sexual assault, or just the general sense of being disliked by one's society, whether any or all of these might play a major role in men's mental health issues. A study that can't even consider such causes is, in my opinion, a fatally flawed study. Well, I don't know enough about this field to be able to say more, but it seems pretty clear that there is a desperate need for more male-positive researchers in clinical psychology to pursue the causes of men's mental health issues. And there is also a desperate need for journalists free of anti-male biases to give us a fair perspective on the research that does exist. As for the CBC, Canada's own fake news site, I'd say there's a direct correlation between its toxic political correctness and its long decline into noxious irrelevancy.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support us on Patreon. If even half of our subscribers gave us $1 per month, we'd be well on our way to creating more and better content. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Studio Brule.